What's new in CloudBees CI 2.332.1.5? Are you new here? If you are, welcome. And if you are new here, you don't know who I am. My name is Darren Pope, and I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. On March 15th, 2022, CloudBees CI 2.332.1.5 was released. We're going to be taking a look at some of the new features and resolved issues in this release. This release is based on Jenkins LTS 2.332.1. I did a video with Mark Waite discussing all of those changes. The link for that video is down in the description. If you've never looked at the release notes for CloudBees CI, let me show you how to get there. We're going to start out at docs.cloudbees.com. We'll go over to documentation, click on CloudBees CI. In the left nav, click on the documentation dropdown and go down to release notes. One of the things that I want to call out to you is under this important section. If you are skipping versions between upgrades, make sure that you refer to all of the previous versions from where you're upgrading from to where you're going to be upgrading to understand all of the changes and potential upgrade processes that you will need to do prior to doing your upgrade. Now, as I said in the introduction, 2.332.1.5 was released on March 15th. And as you can see here, the 1.5 release is a security release. We'll take a look at the notes for that in just a moment. But this release, the 2.332.1.5 release, is a follow-up as a security release to the initial release of 2.332.1.4, which came out on March 9th. So we're going to be taking a look at both the 1.4 and the 1.5 so you get a holistic view of what is in this release. First off, let's click into the full release notes for traditional. And since this one is a security release, there are no real notes under new features, feature enhancements, or anything else. The upgrade notes that are shown here are also underneath the .4. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. But let's take a look at our security advisory. Now, this security advisory only applies to plugins. So there's no new core that's in here. Thus, the number from a 2.332.1 from 4 to .5. So no new core changes, only plugins. I would recommend that you go through and read these release notes for these plugins so that you can determine how quickly you need to upgrade to this version from a security posture perspective. Now let's go back over to our release notes and go back down to the .4 because the .4 is where all of the main information is for this release. So the first thing that you're going to see here is this Guava library upgrade. Big red bold right in front of your face. So what's happened is the Guava library has been upgraded from 11.01 to 31.01. In the video that I did with Mark, we spoke in depth about the reasoning behind why this happened within Jenkins LTS. And since CloudBees CI is based on Jenkins LTS, all of those same rules apply. So if you have your own custom plugins that were using an older version of Guava or had a dependency on an older version of Guava, you might need to talk to CloudBees support to figure out, okay, what changes do I really need to make? Now, I've gone through both the release notes for both the traditional platforms and modern cloud platforms. In this case, other than one small information that was in a previous release about the base Kubernetes version being supported being 1.19, these release notes for both traditional and modern are exactly the same. So let's go ahead and take a look at the release notes for traditional. Now, if you are running CloudBees CI for modern cloud platforms, I would recommend that you go through the modern cloud platform side of the documentation. But for this video, I'm only going to be going through the traditional side since they are equivalent at this point. So for people that do have access to Kubernetes, there is an initial release of CloudBees previews. One of the requirements in order to run CloudBees previews is you must have Kubernetes available to you. You don't have to be running CloudBees CI within Kubernetes to use this, but you do need Kubernetes in order to install CloudBees previews. Now, since this is a preview feature, I'm going to recommend that you go off and take a look at the documentation for previews to get a better feel for what this feature does. Another new feature is that now all container images are being signed by CloudBees. So when you download your images, you can now verify that those were actually signed by CloudBees. Again, there's a link off to the documentation to understand how to verify those images. So any container image, whether it's for CloudBees CI for modern cloud platforms, or if you're using container images just to run on Docker, you can check the validity of those images just by running a couple of commands. And finally, the CloudBees Restricted Credentials plugin has now been added to the CloudBees Assurance program, making it generally available to everyone to use. Under feature enhancements, there were a number of items that were added for configuration as code, or CASC. But the other big item for this release is now at this point, CloudBees CI can run with Java 11. So if you're currently running on a traditional platform with Java 8, you're still okay. But with this release, with the 2.332.1.4 and .5, you can now start up and run CloudBees with Java 11. What you'll notice when you go into Manage Jenkins is if you are still running Java 8, you're going to see an administrative monitor telling you that you should upgrade to Java 11. Now here's the big reason why you need to consider moving to Java 11. In a future release, support for Java 8 is going to be dropped completely. The key point here is any releases that occur during the support window for Java 8 still will be supported for Java 8. But once that release comes out that only supports Java 11, then any releases from that point forward will no longer run on Java 8. So now's the time to start preparing and potentially upgrading to Java 11. There were a handful of resolved issues as well with this release, not real surprising. I'll let you go through and read these at your convenience to see if any of these apply to any situations that you might be running into. I do want to call out one of the known issues that is new for this release. If you are using configuration as code, if you try to configure it to use a Git submodule, that will fail. That is a known issue. So instead of using Git submodules, you're going to have to come up with a different way to do that for now. Finally, let's go down to the upgrade notes. We've already talked about Guava a few moments ago. You may want to go ahead and take a look at the Jenkins LTS upgrade guide. Again, in that video that I did with Mark Waite, link down in the description. You might want to go ahead and watch that video, especially as we're going through the upgrade guide, because that's the same upgrade guide that you need to apply to when you're upgrading CloudBees CI. But probably the biggest thing that you don't want to miss is as you are upgrading from Java 8 to Java 11, you must, I repeat, must update your Java garbage collection arguments, because some of the ones that work with 8 don't work with 11, and vice versa. So since garbage collection has been updated in Java 11, the arguments that worked before don't work with 11 anymore. There's a support document that talks about adding in these Java arguments. Go and take a look at that. It will help you set up the right arguments for your garbage collection. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter at CloudBees. If this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there's new content available on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.